Hey team, welcome to Off the Platform. As always, Jackson, and I'm joined by Greg. How you doing, Greg?
Good, my man. How are you?
Fantastic. Bright and early on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And we are joined today by the recently crowned under 105 US national champion, Ashton Rouska. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good. Good to be on.
So, obviously, last weekend, you guys had USAPL Nationals?
Yes, it just happened last weekend, Daytona Beach, Florida.
And how was it? Recent thoughts? Obviously, you've had sort of a week to decompress a wee bit.
Oh yeah. No, I mean overall it was a great meet. I mean, one Daytona Beach was awesome. It was
Yeah.
cool being at the beach. I mean, it rained a lot of the days, but it was still cool. The meet itself was actually quite fun as well. For me, and I say this a lot, one of the biggest things for competition in meets is, having the competition there to sort of push me and drive me to always bring my A game and bring my best. And I got, what I asked for, so I couldn't be happier.
Ashton, can I just quickly ask a quick question? Strobe lights in in or out? Are you a fan?
I'm not crazy about them. Personally, I'm not crazy.
We've been having this discussion. I thought they looked pretty cool. Jackson's like, you don't ever do strobe lights.
No, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I mean, like they do look flashy, but like sometimes when you're looking at a meet, it just depends on where the lights are positioned. Sometimes, like I've had meets where the lights are positioned like right where my eyes are, and that kind of bothers me a bit. But I mean, other than that, I guess.
Yeah. I thought it looked pretty cool. I mean, we had the strobe lights, you had the big screen behind you. It looked like a real show, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, like for viewership, I think some people might enjoy it, but there are also probably others that don't prefer it. So, I mean, I'm not really sure, I guess. Guess we'd have to take a poll. Don't know.
They almost needed like like video games where it's like, hey, if you have like epilepsy or get migraines from like flashing lights, don't watch this, don't play this.
Put them with a warning.
Yeah, have kind of a disclaimer and a warning.
Yeah, the disclaimer, you got to sign a waiver. Speaking of competition, I mean, you and Bryce, that was a hell of a battle.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Bryce brought his A game too because I think I pushed him in the same way that he pushed me.
Yeah, so like for his like final deadlift, he was pulling for the win, of course. And that would have been a PB for him. So you sort of pushed him exactly to where like you want to be pushing someone in a competition, Was that maths on your side? Was that the plan?
Yes.
Perfect. Very nice.
No, that was exactly what we were going for. I mean, basically the plan was to secure a pretty big squat, like 800 plus, which will, just be huge towards building a big total. Just benching exactly what we need, and then deadlift, pulling making a big jump to a second attempt that will build a total that's very very far to reach for, and and as strong as Bryce is, like the total that generated, that we generated with that second deadlift, it sort of forced him to kind of attempt to overreach from his otherwise his other abilities.
Ashton, I know in training you said you hit 821 pounds for squat. Was that on the cards for the day, or did it just not feel right and you backed it off? You didn't back it off much, obviously, but was that strategic in nature, or was it just how you were feeling?
That was strategic. We were planning to do between 805 and 811.
Okay.
Yeah. No intention to hit 821 at the meet yet. I hit it in training. It gave me a lot of confidence to hit over 800 in the meet. However, with 821, I didn't want to run the risk of a lot of like bar whip or some other variable, cutting my depth and then me like missing a lift and then killing the total. So we aimed for a safer third, 805 to 811.
Yeah.
The record and to take the record too.
Nice. Now you mentioned bar whip. You've noticed across all the events you've done variation in the equipment you've used. So how was the equipment at the Raw Nats?
Yeah. For a national caliber meet, I was not impressed. I've been to local meets where honestly it was better. And also, yeah, it just wasn't great. I mean, like, so I don't know what like the issue was like with the barbells, but it seemed like a lot of people had issues with them, particularly like with whippy squats and like for deadlifts, like the knurling was a bit, it was kind of smooth.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's
so,
not
yeah, so it definitely made some of the lifts more challenging than they otherwise would be, I think. And I mean, I bought like, and we used 20 kilogram Ohio Power Bars Black Sea. And I've said this, on numerous occasions. Like I've bought one brand new before, so I know what those are like, brand new, and those definitely were not new. And I mean, once you like start lifting, loads like that, like 800 pounds, those like little, nuances and stuff really start to matter a lot,
mm,
and can make a big difference in a lift as you get stronger and lift more and more weight. Um, like if I were squatting, like still like in the 500s, like, back when I was, younger, like, um, could do that on like a lot whippier bars and it like really wasn't as much of an issue. But like when you're talking like 800 pounds plus, it's like, it's kind of a different ball game at that point.
yeah.
Matters more.
Every millisecond of the movement, in terms of stepping out, I mean, it's critical, isn't it, to get it right? And if there's any kind of flex in the bar and movement and adverse movement, it's just going to throw you off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I pretty much accepted that over 800, there's probably inevitably going to be some whip, you just like, you set up, you don't rush like your setup or your walkout. And, even like for like the descent on the squats, I generally don't rush either. But when the bar is like really whippy, then I really take my time and I slow it way down. So I'm under that like, like tremendous weight a lot longer. But if it means, getting the lift and securing it, then, you got to do what you got to do
Yeah.
sometimes. Can't always
Ye-
control what they have at the meet.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, from you, that's like a very, I suppose, mature outlook on it. As you like you say, you hit 820 in training, 821 in training, and then but you'd already planned to only go. I say only, but like,
Yeah.
only hit 805, 811 in the comp. So you had a strategy there, in terms of whereas other people will look at it and be like, oh well, if I hit 821 in training, why would I not try and hit like 830 in the comp? You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Whereas you were playing for the win, really, isn't it? At that sort of level of meet, not a Hail Mary big total.
Exactly. This meet was about winning more than it was putting up a PR total. I wanted to put up a PR total, don't get me wrong.
Mm.
And I think my last deadlift, I think if it counted, it would have secured that or it would have tied it. But at the end of the day, when you're actually there and in the moment, it's really just about mostly winning. You can save the mega totals for other meets.
Yeah, I think you would have tied your PB with
So
that
Yeah,
last
like
deadlift. Yeah.
2095, I think.
2095, yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So obviously you've hit a bigger total, but you made decisions along the way to get the win. Is that what do you value more, the totals or the win?
Well, for nationals, definitely value the win.
Mm,
But of course, I have goals, for like the total as well.
mm.
Overall, the total really matters to me a lot, like the most. But I mean, I also have individual goals for each lift that I want to hit in my lifetime, and I'll either hit them or I'll do everything I can to get as close to them as possible. But it's all important to me, really. Yeah, I mean, all of it's really, it all matters.
What do
So
you think is just sorry, Jackson, I was going to quickly going
Yeah.
to ask Ashton because I know he's mentioned this before. And so Ashton, what's more important, the total or the win when it comes to powerlifting for you especially?
Hmm.
And what do you think powerlifters are remembered by? For their wins or their totals?
Yeah, I think um, I think it depends on the weight class, honestly.
Yeah.
In some weight classes, a win, and no offense to the winners in those weight classes, they work hard, but in some weight classes, the wins don't necessarily mean as much. I mean, if it's or maybe not to them necessarily. And I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but I'm just saying,
Mm-hmm.
if you're viewing it or from the outside looking in, like if there's one person who's winning by 100, 200 pounds, it's like I mean, is it really a competition, or is it just someone's show and then everyone else is coming to just, compete and put up the best they can?
Yeah.
And it's nothing against the other lifters, people can train hard and they can, some people catch up and, give them a run for their money. But sometimes it's like, if winning is just so far out of reach, it's like, how much does winning really mean at that point? But, on the other hand, that person may put up a ridiculous total, right? And they'll definitely be remembered for that, if not for like all of the cumulative wins. If we take Taylor Atwood's case, for example, this year, I mean, at Nationals, let's be real, it was a blowout. Nobody was close to beat him. Nobody was remotely close. And that's not to speak ill, about the other 74 lifters. A lot of them work hard and they've had a lot of things to overcome, I'm sure, but none of them were close. That's just objectively the truth. You look at the numbers, none of them were close. And so he won again, which was cool, and that means a lot to him, I'm sure. It means probably the world to him. But at the same time, the total that he put up that day was phenomenal. He would have placed fourth in the super heavies with that total. And, he was like 11 pounds, 10 pounds away from winning the 83 class, winning 163 pounds.
Yeah.
And, that total is an all-time total, I think, for tested and untested for that weight range, that weight category. So, I mean, if anything else, like if Taylor Atwood never competed again, I mean, just imagine, like, it could take years for someone to try to push that total past what he's done this weekend. I mean, his performance was just that impressive. There are some people who could potentially do it, but right now, as it stands, like, that total was mind blowing. So, I mean, I think to answer your question, I think part of it really depends on like the weight class and what the competition dynamic looks like. I mean, in the 93s, for instance, Jonathan, Keiko won by like, half a kilo.
Yeah.
And it was, extremely tight and competitive weight class. In my weight class, I won by, I want to say like, maybe like 30 something pounds or so.
Yeah, 15 and a half kilos. Yeah, so 35 pounds or so.
35 pounds, roughly, right. And that's not necessarily, like a huge margin. And if either of us, got like one or two other lifts, like that would look, different. It was, I mean, my point is like in some weight classes, I think the win just really is like big. And in some weight classes, if you're just blowing everyone out of the water, but you total something ridiculous, and it's mind boggling for people, that really is like salient and stands out as well. So I think overall, I think total is really sort of king, but I also think that people love to watch very close and tight, battles.
I suppose, yeah, like if someone has never been in those sorts of positions, though, if you know what I mean, like if someone doesn't compete in powerlifting, they don't understand the competition aspect. So they're just like, oh, that guy squatted 800 pounds. To them, that's impressive, but they don't know that the person behind them squatted 600 pounds.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in like Bryce's case, like when we competed that day, he squatted 755 pounds, which for him, like for a meet, I think was like a huge meet PR. And again, also a phenomenally like, impressive lift. And and like in other things too, like bench, for instance, like he clearly benches more than I do. Yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I see your point. Like, people will see a lift like, oh wow, that's phenomenal. But when you like watch the whole meet and you see sort of the strategy that has to actually go into it, and calling for chips to lifts and other things, and really just to try to edge out that other person, depending on who's better at which lift, it's really interesting, and it can really be surprisingly complex sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Especially for such an objective number based string sport.
So I mean, I know Bryce has beaten you before. How much did it mean to then come back and take the win this time around?
Yeah. So Bryce is a phenomenal competitor. He's trained and competed for a very, very long time. And what he has been able to do and especially in these past several years, is literally just it's a product of all of the hard work that he's put in over the years, and steadily gaining mass and doing a lot of other things. And now he's able to put up these superhuman performances. And in 2019, like he beat me, and I really wanted to win that meet, but at the same time, it was just slightly it was slightly out of reach. I mean, I think attempt selection and other factors also played a role in that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Bryce came out, the winner. And I knew that I had to do that, weight class again, and that I had to, kind of try to make things right there. I had a 93 title, already. And going down to 93s wouldn't have given me, if I competed 93 this meet, it wouldn't have given me the satisfaction of going 105, whether I won or lost again. But I, totally believed in myself and believed I had the ability to win. But I knew that it would take everything, so I gave it everything. So it meant a lot for me.
So I mean, you come in at like 100 kilos, like so 220 pounds or so. How tall are you?
5'9".
I gotta say, because you look like, I don't know, like I've seen a lot of videos and stuff, and you look like you're like 110, 115, like 240 or 260 sort of thing, because you're jacked, man. Like, have you always naturally been big, or is that just like where's that come from? Is that do you focus much on like bodybuilding style of training and nutrition, or is that just are you genetically quite gifted in that area?
I would say it's probably a combination of all those things. I mean, I'm 24 years old now.
Yeah.
I've been training, I've been lifting weights functionally since I was like 13 years old.
Cool.
And I'm probably now like double the mass I was when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
I was very, very skinny when I was younger. I was not very big at all. But I had like, some muscle on my, otherwise very like skinny and smaller frame at that time. But when I kept training over the years, and once I got into high school, puberty and everything else, and then you're continuing to train. So it's like I really blew up, and it was like this period where I just like exponentially grew, and started to get significantly stronger, and it was just an upward trajectory. And I had some really good guidance along the way too that helped. And met a lot of very interesting people, and I just worked very hard, for the better part of like 11 years now. So I look the way I do, as a result of like 11 years of hard work, and of course like genetics. Like I'm definitely, most likely a genetic outlier to some extent, probably. And well, I mean, there's no probably. It's definitely. I mean, like,
I think that without a doubt.
Yeah. Just like being like objective. Like I was never particularly strict on dieting, but I usually eat reasonably well. If I want to gain weight, increase the calories. If I don't want to gain weight, or if I want, there's like a certain maintenance range that I find that works generally based on like my body weight, and if I want to lose weight. I'm really good at doing that too. So yeah, I mean, and then training wise, like I mean, obviously I don't just it's not, I guess it's not obvious or intuitive for everyone, but I don't just do like the big three. I do a lot of accessory movement. I do, calisthenics. I do like cardio. I do other things too. So really all of those things I think play a role.
I think I heard Ashton, on a previous podcast, you talked about how many hours you typically spend in the gym, and it was upwards of, and I heard this 6 hours.
On Saturdays, it can get that long sometimes. Yeah.
Wow, that's commitment. What's that all about? What's going on in a typical, maybe not necessarily a Saturday workout, but a typical workout? Are you looking for that total holistic body conditioning?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the time frame and what I'm training for. If I'm training for a big meet, it looks different than if I'm like in like you can dub it as an off season. If I'm in like an off season, training will look different, and timing might look different too. How busy I am outside of the gym also matters. But I would say like my training is pretty meticulous for the most part and rather specific, but we're also very flexible and adaptable, and we can adapt to circumstances as they arise. Um, I'll usually train like ideally in an ideal world, I like to train 4 days a week. I like to bench, like 3 times. I like to squat twice, at least once, and then I like to deadlift once or twice. But I generally prefer once a week. Um, but something I also do, like I do pull-ups usually 7 days a week,
Oh
like
wow.
every day, and I like to do, depending on like if I'm in a meet prep or if I'm not in a meet prep, like I'll do more or less cardio as well, less like when I'm getting ready for a meet, especially a big one, more when I'm not necessarily, where there's not a meet like in a short term range of time. So yeah, I mean it really varies on the context and the situation, but generally speaking, those are kind of the things that I follow.
Is powerlifting your only sort of physical hobby, or you got others as well?
I actually also like to do. I also like like hiking and recreationally. Sometimes like I like play sports and stuff like that too. But as of right now, like just given like my sort of like hectic and busy schedule and lifestyle, I mostly do powerlifting, and I just like exercise in the gym generally for well-being, fitness, and of course just to get as strong as I possibly can.
Cool. Are you still in uni? You must be in your last year, or have you finished now?
Oh yeah, so I am. Well, I graduated from undergrad in 2019.
Right.
I'm in grad school right now. I'm 2 years in a grad school. Fingers crossed. I recently took comprehensive exams, so hopefully advance to doctoral candidacy. I took those exams like a week before nationals. So like in tandem with the prep, I was also like preparing for those exams and like taking them and stuff.
Oof.
So it was a very hectic time period.
Yeah, crazy, no doubt. What are you getting your doctorate in, ideally?
Psychology, isn't it?
Yes, clinical psychology.
Awesome. I mean, brains and brawn, I suppose, isn't it? Look at that.
Actually,
you were talking about, I think I heard a podcast a while back, potentially working, is it in the sort of government circles, or like we're talking like CIA, FBI, something like that, behavioral sciences in terms of crime?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I'm not going to say it's entirely up in the air right now. Like I do have like goals and ambitions, but it is kind of up in the air. I mean, I'm going to serve my time in the military for the foreseeable future, and then after that, things could change and priorities can shift. But I mean, right now, that's kind of where my headspace is leaning towards, at least. But I mean, have to explore all the options. We'll see.
Yeah. How much of the psychology do you then cross over into what you do in powerlifting? Do you ever like analyze what's going on inside your own head, or find yourself doing it subconsciously or consciously?
Oh, absolutely. I guess I would consider myself a rather strong, like mentally strong individual. And I kind of look at what I'm doing often, and I know I can be like very critical sometimes, especially of my own training. But I also I like to be as objective as possible, but I know I can also be critical sometimes. So sometimes it's good to have like a coach or like a trusted training partner or something, to sometimes kind of like reel you back in and just kind of talk those things out. And then sometimes I'll do like self-talk too. And I also kind of think about the people that I go against too. Um, I don't intentionally like try to play like mind games with people or anything, but
and hide the t-shirt.
Right. But generally speaking, like as I get a feel for like others' personalities and stuff like that, I kind of get a sense of maybe where their headspace could be, especially if I get to talk to them more and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see the various headspaces that all go into it.
Did you talk to Bryce in the weekend?
Oh yeah, of course. I talked to Bryce after the meet, before the meet too, a little bit.
You didn't tell him he wasn't. You didn't tell him he wasn't ready, did you?
No, of course.
You didn't,
Um,
you didn't say like maybe a week out. Maybe next week it'd be.
no. I mean, when I was there, I mean, I was just so happy to be at nationals. Or like and I know like you were joking, but like all jokes aside, like I was just happy to be there. And I was just trying my best to sort of because I think we were all a little like on edge and nervous because it'd been 2 years since the last one in the world. With COVID and everything else is like no longer a predictable place, and like we've seen that. I mean, it never was a predictable place, but now like we've really seen that, and you realize sort of how you just can't take anything for granted,
No, exactly.
especially competing. It could be snatched from under your feet, and at any minute on a whim.
COVID's really changed the landscape now when it comes to international travel, hasn't it? Like you think twice now before taking that trip. Like I was meant to Australia is pretty close to us, and I was meant to go and ref an event in July over there. And I was, for the first time ever, I'm not nervous about flying, but the whole idea of going to another country for a week was a bit nerve-wracking, and I said, I ended up saying no, and I'd rather not. And then we find out in the last week especially, the travel bubble between New Zealand and Australia has closed. So potentially, it's a case that you could get stuck somewhere.
Right. And you run that risk too with traveling, I mean, of course, like, every different person, based off of, their beliefs about their own health, their beliefs about, the risk and danger of COVID and everything else, like, they have some sort of appraisal of risk of, traveling. But then even beyond that, it's just the fact of like, if I travel somewhere, am I going to get stranded there, or something going to happen? Is there going to be a weird quarantine period? Like what's going to go on? So, there's also that to grapple with as well with traveling. So like all that to say, there's just so much that went into this meet. And I think a lot of people were a bit, nervous and on edge because it had been so long since the last one.
Yeah.
And it felt it had a different feel. It felt different. I mean, similarly to how like and Bryce and I talked about this actually, similarly to how like the Olympics is like spread apart 4 years, it's been 2 years since the last nationals. And, what if something else happens and there, isn't one next year? And not likely scenario. But like I said, the world's an unpredictable place. So it feels different, So I just kind of did my best the whole meet to, go around and make sure everyone was, they had their head in the game, and, just try to be as uplifting as possible for them and for myself, and, just have a good time generally.
So obviously the recent decision by IPF to shift Worlds from Belarus to Sweden, does that, I mean, obviously it's you've got to leave it up to the powers that be before you can sort of make a decision. But is that now on the cards for you? Was it on the cards before?
Right. And right, like you said, depending on what happens with the IPF and the USAPL and everything else, like
that's another
can't
factor.
say anything definitively. Yeah. But I will say, one, while things were, planning to be, originally hosted in Belarus, answer would be no. I'm not going to Belarus. One. I'm not comfortable going there as a service member, as a person of color, and a lot of other things to consider.
Oh, really?
And just considering that, like an American did die there at an IPF event.
That's true.
And if I go over there, unarmed and unable to, like have adequate means of like protection, then I'm just not. I'm not going to fancy the idea. And even just beyond that, like there didn't really seem to be any like major sort of like public like statement or anything else like from the IPF to address it or anyone else. And I just found it like utterly disrespectful, and it really left a bad taste in my mouth. And the fact that they were going to host it again there without really doing that or properly addressing it to me was very disrespectful, and I was not going to participate in that or even give them my no, I can't.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah,
no, fair enough too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just about to explain to the listeners who aren't aware, there was a death in Belarus with one of the IPF nationals in Belarus. I think it was a family member of one of the athletes. Was that correct, Jackson? You aware of that situation?
Yeah, I think it was a family member of one of that went over with the team. And yeah, it's very, very odd that they never ever like looked into it more. And then obviously, like you say, we're gonna quite happily have Worlds there again.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And to me, it's just like it's disrespectful. Like, yeah, it was just disrespectful. So I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna even fancy that. But seeing that, I think that a lot of people made enough noise about it.
Yeah.
And there may be other factors that went into this decision, but bottom line is they changed it to Sweden. Which I think on the IPF's part was a great move. And that's a decision that I can get behind and can respect. And personally, I've always wanted to go to Sweden. Looks like a beautiful country, looks like a great place. And something I'm much more open to doing. Not that the IPF is open to trying to at least right some of the I think poor decision making in the past. I think is a step in the right direction. I think there's still work that needs to be done, especially like on like the drug testing end, and there's like a lot of other things that are going on right now. But I think it is a step in the right direction. And for me, at the end of the day, I like to go where the competition is. I went up to the 105 weight class because that's where the competition was. I signed up for the Showdown because that's where competition is. In Sweden, there are some very, very strong up and coming 105 contenders, and there will be competition there too. So yeah, I mean, for me now at this stage, it's definitely in the cards. And if the relations, between the federations go well and we can send a team, I would be more than happy to go and take a shot, like put my name in the hat for claiming, an open IPF world title and competing in Sweden with, some of, the world's finest, 105 weight class lifters. But of course, like Belarus and everything else, beforehand, I was completely closed off to the idea.
Yeah.
And was actually thinking about not even doing an IPF meet again until that was like rectified or corrected.
So if say, obviously, so say if you didn't do Worlds and went and did the Showdown, what's the feel there? Like, are you then banned from IPF, or are you then like, do you know what would be the case?
Yeah, right now as it stands, if you compete in a meet like that, basically there's a 12-month suspension from IPF meets. The USAPL itself doesn't necessarily really seem to generally have issues with competing in outside federations. However, with IPF and selecting teams for the IPF, that's where lies the problem. And basically what would happen is I just wouldn't be competing in the IPF for at least another year or two if I decided to do that meet. And I can live with that. That's fine. But I also do want, I did, of course, like eventually still like want an IPF title. And, now that they've changed it to Sweden and there's going to be some very good 105 lifters there and stuff like that, I'm really like seriously like, hey, like this could be, like my shot at doing that. And, actually going and getting the competition that I always seek and doing it at the highest stage, that like we have to offer, in our, humble string sport. So, that's kind of where I'm at.
Ashton, the win at the IPF Worlds would also increase your chances of entry into the Sheffield as well, wouldn't it? I think they have different tiers of entry. I think winning Worlds is obviously the highest tier.
Right. And with the Sheffield, so for a while it seemed like, to me, especially when COVID blew up, it just seemed like a hypothetical meet at that point. And it seemed more like an if rather than a when.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to put all my eggs in this basket. But recently I've gotten some more reassurance about that event. It looks like it's going to be a very big event for SVD. And, there's a lot of good things, in motion, working for that. So I'm a lot more open to it now than I was last year. And would definitely be happy to, get a Sheffield title under my belt too. It's in the cards.
Does that, in theory, does Sheffield count as an IPF meet, or is it an invitational? Like, if you did Showdown, would they not invite you for Sheffield?
Not necessarily. It gets a little complex, and I don't think the the
It's powerlifting.
criteria for I don't think the criteria for like the selection of lifters has been completely finalized yet.
Mm.
But the way I understand it is like, if IPF seems to be the main entryway into that meet, winning
Yeah.
an IPF title.
Yeah.
If I were to win the title and then, do like a meet like the Showdown, depending on their selection criteria, there's a chance that I'd still be able to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a big chance that I wouldn't be able to do it either.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be because I did that meet, but it would just be because, depending on their selection criteria, if they select people from, say, only the most recent IPF, championship, and I didn't do that one, then, I'd be ineligible. But unless they had like a wild card pick, or they say, well, the last 2 IPF championships, then you'd have something to work with there.
I don't know if you saw recently, we actually had Dr. Kern on to discuss thus starting a professional powerlifting league. I can't remember what he called it on his Instagram, but what are your thoughts surrounding that? Like, would that be a long-term goal? It was basically that they were going to have like a standing over the course of a year, and you do certain competitions, and then your score is the average of what you scored in those competitions, and then whoever's first, second, and third at the end of the year gets prize money, accolades as best lifter of the year, etc.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I'm particularly familiar with that idea. I'd need to look into it more before I give you an opinion on it, but it does sound interesting.
Basically, yeah, what they're doing is it's along the same lines as what the IFBB do. So you would compete at a qualifying event, and you could potentially get your pro card as a powerlifter. So this is WRPF, and then you would compete in pro events throughout the year. And then he wasn't altogether clear on what the conclusion would be, but essentially, the highest points wins, you then qualify for a premier event, which would be like an Olympia style powerlifting meet. But it's very early days, but it's it's obviously, well, I think it's a step in the right direction anyway. Powerlifting it's going that way, as all sports do eventually, towards that sort of professional standing with money prizes, big money prizes, and the ability to earn income, as a powerlifter. Which, and I is that a motivator for you, Ashton? Is winning cash prizes, potentially making a living out of powerlifting full time, given the amount of effort you're putting into your studies and so forth at the same time?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, for sure, like winning money would be really cool. At meets, and they're starting to offer that more and more. So, I mean, granted, there's no really like red lines I'm crossing. I'm totally open to it. But I don't think there'll ever be a point where powerlifting will be like a full-time job or career for me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't think, I don't ever see that feasibly occurring. Because not because like I don't think it's possible that I could do that in powerlifting if we got to that point, but more so because I guess I have a lot of I've got a lot of life and things outside of powerlifting that I aspire to do and things I aspire to be. So I don't think I would ever do that. But I do think that I do still, regardless of what I do, I'm not self-centered to say, well, because I'm not doing it, I don't think, powerlifting should go in that direction. I certainly think that if we can go in that direction and, grow as a sport and bring in more talent, then we should certainly do that.
Yeah.
I mean, Ashton, for you, where is there a point where you say, hey, this is it, or do you not see that in the future at all?
Yeah. I think there will eventually be a point where where I really slow down on competing, or I even stop competing altogether. Not anytime soon, but I could definitely see, I don't think I want to compete past 40. I'll still strength train and I'll still, work out and, be fit and strong and everything. But at that point,
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend lifting past 40. It's hard work.
Yeah.
It just gets too hard.
Yeah. At that point for me, because, life changes, and priorities like shift and stuff like that. And, At that point, I mean, who knows? Like, if I have like a family or whatever else, like I may be a lot more invested in other things than competing. And that's not to say that you can't compete, but at that point, it just may not be. It may not be something that I'm really as interested in. Like, like just in my own personal life, there may be other things I'll be more focused on, but I know for sure in my 20s I want to keep rocking with it, and really squeeze out those 20s and 30s and try to really put up some mega performances in the next decade or so.
Yeah. Interesting you say that, because we've had Dan Bell on the podcast, and he's what, mid-30s as well, Jackson?
No, dude, he's young, he's like 30.
Damn. So 30, so he's talking about an end, in the relatively near future as well. Then we had Mariana, so it just recently retired, obviously. She's still in her 30s. So there's almost a trend. We've had Adele Manuel.
He's 34. Sorry, he's 34. I take it back.
Yeah. Adele Manuel. I think he made mid 30s as well, didn't he? Before he dropped out.
Odell. Yeah, late 30s. Yeah,
late 30s. Yeah. So there's definitely. I mean, obviously, you can still keep competing and going well into your 40s and 50s, but I guess once you've hit those heights, and that's, reward versus effort is exponentially higher as you get older. Obviously, it gets harder to achieve the heights of when you were in your mid to late 20s or early 30s. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that PR, decades later. And they lived for like many years, but they hit peaks and heights much later. But for me, I think I'm on a very good path to set out and accomplish everything that I'd love to do in the sport in the next from now. I'm 24 now, in the next 16 years, I think, before I hit 40. And I mean, I may still compete after 40. I mean, it just won't be nearly as often. I mean, I might do a local meet here and there for fun, show up, and just have fun. But
could you do it?
I don't think it'll be anything beyond that.
Could you compete just for fun?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always fun. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I always have fun competing. I guess there isn't a meet where I don't have fun, but then it would just really be like purely for leisure, and I wouldn't be as crazy about competition and stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think. I don't know.
It's hard to think about when you have a certain perspective on it. So yeah, obviously we said we weren't potentially going to mention it, but your third attempt deadlift at nationals. What was actually the call on that?
Who gave the reds? Was it the two side refs, or was it front?
Yes.
Okay.
The two side judges gave me
Right.
reds. So that tells me it had something to do with probably I mean, if that's the case, it would have something to probably do with like either a downward movement, but I don't think there was any downward movement. So it was probably something with locking out, like with legs or knees. Like maybe unlocking and locking. When I did the deadlift and performed it, I didn't feel that, but I mean, they may have caught something that I didn't see, but it seemed like, to me personally, I'm relatively objective with like a lot of my training and my lifting. I thought it was a good lift. I thought it should have counted. I thought it was better than my second deadlift even at the meet. Like just if we're going strictly off like judging, I think that second one could have went either way.
I mean, I know the video I've seen is from the front, and obviously, disclaimer, it's hard to tell, but I've watched it maybe half a dozen times. I literally cannot see a thing wrong.
Only half a dozen, Greg. I've watched it. I think I watched it about 20 times. I was like, okay, this is a sick deadlift. This man looks great. What are they giving reds for?
Yeah.
Like
I don't know. I only got to talk to like I think one of the judges, and it seemed like the answer was like a little cryptic. I think it had something to do with unlocking and relocking of knees or something, but it was really cryptic. It didn't make a lot of sense. Like it wasn't very straightforward feedback. So that's like the only thing that frustrates me. Is like, one, I think that the lift should have counted. If it's like a bad call, or no, if it's like a call and it's a no lift, and I know in my heart it wasn't like a lift, like I can accept that and live with it. Put on my big boy pants, walk off the platform, head high, it's fine. But like if I feel like I'm actually being wronged, it's something different, because I want to know what I did wrong so I can construct, like constructively, for constructive purposes, so I can
Of course.
fix it like in my training, because this
Yep.
call, whatever it was for, has never been an issue in any meet.
Mm.
So it's like, how the hell do I get better if I don't know what I did, like what I did wrong here?
Mm.
I mean, it could have also just been like, a fluke and like just a one-time thing, but it's like me, I try to come back, more refined, and I like my lifting to be, just like refined. I don't like to get, red lights for something like depth, or something like, soft knees, or downward movement, or like that kind of stuff. Like, I like to refine my lifting.
Yeah.
And so I really want to know, what exactly it was, so that way I could, just like focus on it in training for a bit and make sure we're squared away. But I don't really know. So,
So your coach, how long have you guys been working together?
A bit over a year, give or take.
And is that so? You say that you obviously you take on it, like you're a smart dude, so you make a lot of adjustments yourself. Is it more of like an open communication rather than him just telling you what to do, or?
Yeah, it's like it's collaboration. We collaborate.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's
we
cool.
collaborate. We don't really like, we don't really butt heads. It's not a, we're two, I would say, more like mature individuals that come together. We collaborate on goals, what we want to do. We collaborate on a plan. It's not just a, um, you say jump, I say how high. It's,
Yeah.
It's a collaboration, and there's trust, both ways from both parties, in each other. And it's been it's a very successful, relationship. I mean, I've been lifting weights for 11 years. It's not like this is my first, rodeo.
Yeah.
And he's also been, he's got some pretty great experience coaching now. And so, it's neither of our first rodeos. And he's also been, lifting and training for a very long time. And he's a very, in shape and strong, like, fit individual. So, I mean, it works out really, really, really well. But at nationals and on meet day, um, and because I usually like to have a lot of control over like my attempts and meets and stuff like that. I definitely did at nationals intentionally relinquish some of that, because I wanted to just focus purely on execution. So I put, like, of course, my complete faith and trust in him to, steer me in the right direction, and we both kept punching the right buttons, and it all worked out.
I mean, how important is that, do you think, the ability for you to just say to him, look, you know what I want to win, so just do it, do the thing,
Yeah, it was huge, man. I mean, it was massive. I mean, it's been a long time since I've, like, really just like straight up trusted someone like that, like with all my attempts, just like, because I usually have like the most control over my performances, because there was a performance where I went against my intuition. We made a judgment call, and at the moment it was a reasonable call, like in judgment for attempts. But it's a judgment call that when I look back on, I don't regret, but I know that I probably should have stuck with my intuition. So that definitely made me reluctant to be like that. But in this meet, I was like, well, we have been working together for some time now. I trust him. I
Yeah.
trust in his ability to, to coach well at a meet environment. And he trusts in my ability to, to execute and move iron. And, we trusted in each other. So in my mind at that point, I was like, hey, there's no reason that I can't trust this guy with everything I've got. So I gave him everything I had, and, he gave me everything he had.
So are you saying that, what was there a meet at some stage where someone who you'd said to make attempt selections, or you had made bad attempt selections? Which meet was that?
So that was 2019 Raw Nationals.
Yeah. Okay.
So with that meet, so I went 8 for 9. That was a great. Like, don't get me wrong, it was a really good meet. Like, outside of like just missing like the last deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
But we had like a general plan, and I didn't have a coach at the time, because I had trained myself for like 5 years before working with Marcellus. I did my own programming, my own training. When I won 2017 Raw Nationals Open, in the 205 class, that was off of a program that I made myself, a plan that I made myself, and everything else. But we were like, well, this second deadlift, like let's try to secure second. At the time, it was a very reasonable thing to do. So not, I'm not saying anything, like bad about it per se, but my intuition, my gut was telling me no, like to stick with what you planned and do that. But we lowered it. We're like, we'll do this to secure second. And then we missed the third one, which I had hit in the meet before, but it just wasn't there that day. I was gassed after the second one. That's why I think that's probably why my intuition was telling me to just go for it, my second one, and make the jump, because I'm used to making big jumps, and I don't think I would have missed the weight like I did on my third. And that ultimately cost me like the win that year, but also like someone else pulled the PR that day, Michael Davis, and then I got knocked to third, and it was like I should have like trusted my intuition there, but at the same time, at the moment, it was a reasonable judgment call. So there's like obviously no hard feelings or bad blood about it, because it was something like that was out of our control and that we couldn't predict. But with all that to say, like I still was like I should have like listened to my intuition. That's how I felt about it, But so that made me a little reluctant, for a little while to trust anyone else with attempts. And I usually just went up to score tables and boards and I told them exactly what I wanted. But this meet, I was like, well, let's let go of some of that because, like I said, at the time it was a reasonable call and something unpredictable happened and it just happened and it was what it was. But, let's relinquish some of that. Let's, give some of that control to the coach that, that you claim you trust. And, he trusts in you completely. So there's no reason you can't trust in him, and it'll work out. And it did.
And it worked out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big step for you. You say that you do like I'm a big fan of this as well. Big jumps on attempts. You know what I mean? Like your openers should be last warm up and etc. And then you just ham it. Do you think that's a skill that more people should learn?
Yeah.
In theory, like, do they need to potentially maybe take bigger jumps in training? Or yeah.
I think so. I think at a certain level, yes. Like, I mean, if you're like a novice or beginner lifter and it's much harder to sort of, and you're not as comfortable with yourself, maybe not. But I think as you get a bit more seasoned and experienced and as you get stronger too, I think that there is definitely value in that, just purely from like a conservation of like energy standpoint.
100%.
And, in case like you're off on a day or something like at a meet or you're not feeling well, like if you open light enough, you can tell from there, like, okay, maybe I need to dial things back today, and then you take a safer second attempt, you get it. You're like, okay, that moved okay, let's do this for the third, or, oh, that was really tough. Let's scratch the third and not get injured, or let's just make a small, jump for the third because we need to build the total, rather than open too heavy, and then you're done. And then you bomb out, or, you only get an opener, or, something like that. So,
the number of times I've head refed a squat and they've come out and they've grind that first attempt as a grind, and you think to yourself, oh no,
you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
You're for a long ass day.
Yeah, exactly. Like mentally, like that's not good. Like you lose like some momentum there. You lose some of your edge, like for a meet. Like
try and PB that first attempt.
Yeah. I mean, like people can recover and still do well the rest of the meet, but like at the same time, but sometimes a lot of times you may not, like, you might lose like some good momentum there. You might get in your head, and just from a physiological standpoint, it also might be exhausting for you to do that. You're attempting a weight you have no business attempting 2 or 3 times, and then you have to still bench after that, and then you still have to deadlift after that, like max effort. Then you're probably going to affect your top end strength. You
often see that as an issue as well. You see people that have come out and they've PB'd each of the individual attempts on separate days or in separate weeks, and they come out and they expect to put all 3 of those PBs together in the first attempt
in one day. Yeah,
exactly. Never having done all 3 lifts in tandem before, so not often, but occasionally. And I just feel sorry for these people. I think you need a coach.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it too, and that's for me like why I actually, for the last like few years, I actually never deadlift like by itself in a training session. I always do something before it. Like the least I'll do is like a squat, like workout. Like I won't ever just like deadlift like by itself, like isolated on a day, because I just don't believe in it anymore. Because in a meet, if I'm squatting 800 pounds before I deadlift, like I need to somehow, replicate those conditions in training so that way I'm prepared for it. At least that's just how I see it. I mean, so, different folks, different strokes, and some people are like, well, I'd rather progress my deadlift better and train that isolated. And then on meet day, what happens. Like, I feel fine. But for me, it's like, for me, at the level of competitiveness I'm at and then how much weight I actually just squat on a meet day, especially on like a 220-pound person, like, yeah, like I think there's value in me training my deadlift sort of pre-fatigued, and it serves as a better indication of my ability, like for me. And I'm right, it does. So
yeah,
yeah.
it works. What's a typical training sort of breakdown for you, Ashton?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, I like to train 4 days a week, like to bench 3 days, deadlift 1 to 2, squat 1 to 2. Preferably now, I like to squat 2. Usually like 1 high bar day, 1 low bar day. I never like to squat low bar twice a week or more, and I never like to conventional deadlift more than once a week. I don't even like to sumo more than once a week. If I deadlift twice a week, I'm doing 1 sumo and 1 conventional.
Okay.
And I'll SBD usually 1 day a week. If things are very busy and hectic outside of training, I'll combine some sessions and I'll do 2 SBD days a week, but they're, fairly spread apart, like 1 on Tuesday, 1 Saturday. And the Tuesday one is not going to be as intense as the Saturday one. So it's reasonable to manage and to be able to manage fatigue and everything else that way, there's no overuse or I don't get injured, or there's a smaller likelihood for that. Saturdays are usually the big days because, there's no it's Saturday. So I generally don't have any, class or practicum requirements on Saturdays. I may do some work Saturday, but I mean, there's no place, duty that I have to be on Saturday, so I can just spend that day. I can wake up early, or wake up comfortably, go train in the late morning, early afternoon, and just really just focus just solely on that for a few hours. And some of those days I'll spend like up to 6 hours in the gym, and I do that, and earlier, you said that was great commitment, and I agree. But for me, like after a stressful week, just being able to roll in Saturday morning, early afternoon, and just have, the gym and the weights there, and just really just be able to focus on that, and kind of tune out the rest of the world is, that's like this, it's therapeutic for me. So that's a big part of my training too, I think.
Like I say, yeah, you enjoy it. It's not like a chore.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't be mad at myself when I spend 6 hours in there because, it's 6 hours that I'm, enjoying and I'm happy. So,
yeah. How important is, I mean, you talk about therapy. How important do you think working out in weights, and maybe not powerlifting as such, but working out is for mental health?
Oh, there's a pretty I would say there's a pretty robust literature that suggests that, yes, that, physical activity and exercise, is very helpful for, reducing stress, for, and just for, improving mental health in general. Actually, some of the research that I'll be doing will have a lot to do with that. So stay tuned. And I'll probably talk more about it as time goes on publicly. But I have done a lot of delving into the literature, and there are some pretty interesting findings. There's some very interesting findings, especially depending on, the symptoms or the disorder, or even if there's no pathology involved, just mental health, just managing stress and other things. There's some very, interesting, I think there's some very interesting evidence to suggest that yes, that exercise, physical activity, fitness is, I think something that we all should, to whatever extent that we can, given our ability or disability, we should try to incorporate and implement into our lifestyle.
Yeah.
100%.
What sort of, Ashton, what sort of people do you think, and this is a question that often comes up, and I've asked it, and Jackson, we've talked about it as well. What sort of people are attracted to powerlifting? Because we often interview and obviously see when we run events and so forth, we see a full spectrum. Probably a wider spectrum of people than maybe in some other sports, but maybe I'm just generalizing. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think there is a very wide spectrum of people. Powerlifting, especially straight up raw powerlifting, just showing up to a meet and lifting some weights, and it's very. I think it's becoming more and more accessible, and it's slowly gaining some momentum and popularity because it's so It's not like, don't get me wrong, it's not like easy to do. Like, it's not easy to put 800 pounds on your back and squat it. But
No,
everyone's not doing
I
it,
can't
and
do it.
everyone's not trying to do that.
Yeah.
But like to go in and to push yourself and to work past previous limitations and get stronger and get better. I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of satisfaction for people of all varying types. And I think that's why you see so many different types of people do powerlifting. I mean, you see people who are who have other sport or athletic backgrounds in powerlifting. You see people who have zero athletic background in powerlifting. And you see a lot of everything. I mean, you see people who tried other sports or maybe like got injured or left that sport for whatever reason, and then they found powerlifting, and then they got into it and they really loved it. And then you also see people who's never lifted or moved a weight a day in their life and never competed in any sport, and they spontaneously join like your powerlifting team or club, and then they fall in love with it, and they stick with it. And then there's also people that don't enjoy it for whatever reason, and they don't stick around for it, and that's okay too. But I think as far as like the spectrum of people, I mean, it's just so broad, and there's just so many people that I've seen now, along the way that have gotten into it. It's very hard to just identify a specific like group of people. I think you see some of everything.
It is a hard. I think for a lot of people, it's like something that they can see progression in very quickly. Obviously, when you're first starting out, you can basically, your level of progression to the level of effort you put in is basically 1-to-1, if you know what I mean. Like, and so they can come along with, there can be nothing else going right in their entire life, but they can come in and go to the gym like a few days a week, and then they'll come in the next week and they'll be better at it. Which, like, especially in this day and age, like when people want shit yesterday, there's not many things that can give you that sort of feedback.
Yeah, and like not that that response to that novel stimulus, and just this upwards trajectory of when you first get into lifting weights, because you are introduced to novel stimulus, you're quickly improving at it and getting better and better and adapting, and that's like partly a function of adapting to it, but other factors too, if they gain weight or gain muscle or whatever else, bone density, etc. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Like, I think a lot of people do seek instant gratification a lot. And I think that at first in powerlifting, you might get that for a little bit, but there comes a point, where you won't get that anymore. And, your progress will come either in baby steps or it might come in strides every now and then. But for most people, it does dramatically slow down. And I think that, if you stick with powerlifting and then you see the small improvements over time, and they eventually add up to very substantial improvements that, can also it's also a good lesson, I think, in patience and just really sticking with something, even if it doesn't always feel like from day to day that you're getting better or improving. I think that's a very useful, just like life skill in general.
I mean, for you, obviously, as you advance, you obviously an advanced lifter now, and you have to keep, like you say, putting more and more effort in. And like you say, eventually the trade-off won't be worth it, and so you'll probably stop competing as much as you are. In the last sort of couple of years, you've done bigger and bigger competitions, obviously with nationals, worlds, Arnold's, etc., and you've really come into the spotlight. Has that sort of changed the pressure for you with lifting, if any?
I would say that it's actually pushed me to be better, and to get stronger. I mean, as simple as it sounds, like if you look at my performances from 2017 to now, in 2017, when I won the 93 Open, I totaled 1851 at that meet. That was 2017. 2018, December, like a year and a couple months later, I hit a PR total at 1901. So about a 50-pound jump, right? There's a reason I'm saying all this. In 2019, I hit a 1984 total, and there was an 83-pound jump in improvement from that year to year.
Yeah.
In 2020, I hit a 2095 total, and there was a 111-pound improvement in that year. In each of those years, the common denominator is I sought out competition to push me to get as strong as I possibly could. And, my, sort of like, veracity to like sort of seek competition and to be competitive and to go against the best and to be the best and among the best, at the least. I think part of that has really pushed me to just keep getting stronger and keep getting better. And I think there's so much to that, for some people may be underrated. And I know some people, are, more along the lines of like, let me accumulate and stack wins and titles and records and everything else. And that's all fine and good, no judgment. I think it's cool. But for me, a big part of competing beyond all of that nonsense is to just be continuously pushed, like until you literally like can't do anymore. And for me, when I do that, I always get stronger. And I was giving you those numbers for 2017 to 2020 because there was a trend in that time period, and that trend will be very difficult to keep up this next year. But a trend that was there nonetheless. Each year, there was an increase in the total, right? But also consider that each year the increase in the total, like the increase from year to year, also increased each year. So not only did I get better each year, but I got better by more each year,
which is pretty unheard of as an advanced lifter.
Yeah, at that level, right?
Yeah,
and I think I can attribute a lot of that to what I was just describing, basically.
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's huge.
Ashton, based on that,
are we going to see in 2260 total
22
next year?
Well, I'm just thinking in your class at the Showdown. If you did the Showdown, you've got the likes of Kevin Oak with 2177. Is that competition for you to make you go the next level, or do you have competition at IPF Worlds that would achieve the same thing? Like which yeah.
I have competition either way I go. I've got competition, fortunately. Yeah. So Kevin Oak. So I think the total that you cited, I think that was his best 242. I'm not sure what his best 220 total was because I think the world record for 220 is a bit lower than that.
Yeah.
But definitely still a number that I think that I can beat at some point. I don't know when, but I think I can. I think I have the potential to pass that. But whether I'm 220 or 242. But IPF Worlds. Sorry.
I was going to say, just in terms of totals, I mean, you could go up against Taylor, but that wouldn't be a total win. That would be a points win, wouldn't it? Is that
it would be point based?
Yeah. Is that as appealing?
Which is also good competition, huh?
Is that as appealing as going up against somebody with a bigger total?
I think usually I prefer going up against someone just total wise. I just prefer that because I just like to be strong. Just like more bigger numbers and everything else. But with Taylor specifically, I do really enjoy the competitiveness of the point system too, because Taylor is a phenomenal lifter, one that I really respect, and I definitely enjoy that battle too. But yeah, I mean, at IPF Worlds, so you've got some of the strictest judging in the world. You've got international travel. Often you've got the equipment they serve and everything else. 2-hour weigh-ins, 20 kilogram bar, kilogram plates, calibrated, everything. Whole 9 yards. So you've got like some pretty good lifters that are emerging in the 105 now. Like you've got young man from Ukraine who totaled like 2016 recently, something like that ballpark. You got a Russian who recently totaled 1984 and is capable of much more. You've got Emil from Sweden who's looking like a 2000 plus total now. So there's definitely going to be some competition in Sweden too. And the old world record, I think it's like 1974 for 105s, is this next year. It will not exist anymore if I think any of us show up. So it's very exciting. Now, if I were going to IPF Worlds and there was no one like in that ballpark, it would be different for me because the competition wouldn't be the same. And it wouldn't be the same for me like if I won that meet because I won it, but it was easy.
Yeah.
I mean, not easy, but I mean, I think you understand what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
But like, I prefer and seek, the aggressive competition and, pushing me to just milk whatever I'm like everything that I'm capable of at that time. That's always what I prefer. And I think that's what has kept me getting stronger and has kept things interesting for me.
So what's the next milestones for you? I mean, so you were the lightest person in the USAPL or the whole of the IPF to squat 800?
I'm the lightest in the whole IPF.
So the lightest in the whole of the IPF to squat 800, which is
I want to
ludicrous.
say tested like all time. I think I was the highest, the lowest body weight 800 raw squat.
Yeah, 100%. And then, so obviously keep pushing that. I mean, what is the next milestone for you? I suppose a 2,100 pound total, 955 kilograms.
Yeah, it's in the cards, but I am thinking bigger than that.
Yeah, of course. What about a 500 pound bench? I mean, you've been around like the 440 to 460 mark for a while.
Yeah. So bench is very difficult for me. It's a wild card. It's always been really hard for me to bench, particularly. But like I have like the upper body like build and mass and stuff, but leverage wise, like not the best, but not the worst. But a lot of other things too that influence like bench over the years, like depending on how much cardio I'm doing or other stuff that I'm doing, like physically, like like for like training or whatever else outside of powerlifting, will affect bench, as well as like last year in 2020, I had like a series of like pec strains that occurred, and that really set my bench back a lot as well. So the fact that I'm benching where I am now is like really good sign. And I've almost hit 500 like 3 times now. Like I've gotten like right to lockout and just barely missed it like 3 times.
Next time.
And at meets, it's really hard for me to time my benches and peak them well. So I still have to figure that out. Like, it's been so many years, but like my bench, it's very rare where I go into a meet and my bench just feels, like on fire. It always feels like average or like meh. So I don't know what it is, but it's something to continue to grapple with and figure out. Because historically my bench in a meet will always be 20 to 30 pounds less than what I've done like in a gym. And it depends on like a lot of other factors too, like judging as well. Like sometimes like I've seen this in some of my videos, I get very, very long like start commands, so I'm like holding a very high percentage of my like ability, and I'm just holding it there for like several seconds waiting for a start command, and I don't know why, but I am. And then that affects my like the longer I wait, usually like that probably takes a good 10 to 15 pounds off my bench. The seat and then the bench seat you're using can take another 10 to 15 off your bench. And then of course, like if a handoff is a little botched or goofy, which happens sometimes, that can take another 5 to 10 off potentially. So you're looking already at like a 30, 25 pound loss.
Oh yeah.
And for me, I've noticed sort of like that trend. So I'm just trying to, continue to grapple with that and figure that out.
Oh, dude, you're preaching to the choir. I know the feeling. I did 495 like in like 2017, and then it was only last year that I hit over 500. So like 3 years for 2.5 kilos or 5 pounds. Like it's a long road. It's a long ass road. Like
bench is really tough compared to like progressing the other ones. I've noticed.
Yep. And I know that feeling too, but with the long start commands too. It almost feels like minutes have gone by and you're holding the bar above your chest. I don't know. I've never really found that like particularly reasonable, just holding like there at the start for no good reason. Well, not if your elbows are locked out, because typically that start command is waiting for them to, waiting for you to lock your elbows out. But if your
elbows are locked, butt on the seat, feet flat, all that stuff,
exactly.
If it's all set up, as soon as you bring it out, look around, like everything's good. Start.
Let's go.
But no, it's like
what are we waiting for? Exactly. It's a lot of weight to be holding above your chest.
Especially if it's near max, you're literally generating fatigue just holding that weight there.
Exactly. Asymmetric hold.
So for me, I try to be strategic with benches I pick in meets too, because of those reasons. But yeah, I would definitely love to hit over a 500 bench, this year if it's in the cards. Um, because my lifetime goal is, of course, to get well past that. Um, and yeah, it's just going to take some more figuring out, but we'll get there. For squat and deadlift for this year in particular, I don't have like a specific number goal in mind, but I know that I want to squat and pull something bigger than I've done before ever. So, if I hit lifetime PRs in both of those this year, that would be great as well.
Nice.
Yeah. No, when because you've never traveled super far. You've done junior worlds?
Yeah, I did that in Oroshaza, Hungary.
Yeah. And how did you find the travel and stuff affected you, if at all?
I mean, I still performed pretty well at the meet.
Yeah.
I pulled like at that time an all-time deadlift PR at the meet.
Yeah. Nice.
So that was fine.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting. I mean, obviously traveling to Sweden, like you say, the Swedish guy that you'll be up against, for him, it's almost like a
home advantage.
Home advantage. It's almost like a local meet. He's just going down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get there early enough, I mean, would you plan on getting there probably a week out, just adjusting, climatizing? Yeah. I don't think
at least 5 days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all doable. It's all doable. This international. You just got to plan ahead and make sure you listen to some good advice on that one.
Yeah, and I want to have some time to enjoy Sweden before and after the meet. So
nice.
There would definitely be a few hikes there for after. I assume for after. So I mean, any closing remarks? Anything you want to leave the people with?
Well, I've said this before. I like to just, like to all the people I compete with, in the sport, like I appreciate a lot of like the love and the support and the kindness that I've received from so many people, so many complete strangers even. But I also do want to give just like a special thanks to, Bryce and to all my competition, for continuously pushing me to be a better and stronger lifter, and to just continue to just make me a better, more well-rounded, refined lifter and a stronger man overall. I really appreciate it.
Excellent.
Sure. Where can people find you?
I mean, they can find me on Instagram, I guess.
What's your you recently changed
you changed it, didn't you? Yeah.
Lumberjack Dash.
Lumberjack, yeah.
Lumberjack Dash, that's right.
Yeah, for a second when I saw it the other day, I thought, well, it's someone different, but no, same guy.
It's me.
There's I had to ask Ashton, there's a quote on every single of your well, not a quote, but like almost like a little poem. I can't remember the guy's name, but you pin it. Is it you that pins it every time? And it makes for a great read. Every single post. It's a friend of yours.
Yeah, that's one of my best friends, Christian. He always has something very interesting and colorful to say, and I like to just highlight it.
It's awesome. It's always the first thing I read when I go on to have a read of his. Yeah. Excellent.
He's a very thoughtful guy.
Yeah. No, he seems like a brilliant mate. Well, Ashton, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. We've learned a lot, and we really appreciate your time. We wish you all the best. Hope to get you on again. I know Sixpack will be happy for you if you do go to the IPF Worlds. He was pushing hard for it.
Yeah.
So no, we hope we're happy to see how you go to the IPF Worlds or the Showdown, and to achieve some big career highlights in the coming months.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, you gentlemen, for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity and for getting to chop it up with you guys. It was really enjoyable for me as well. And please, if you ever want me back on, just reach out.
Oh, definitely, 100%. Awesome. Thanks, Ashton.
Thanks for your time, sir.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.